Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MTG Traders. My name is Taryn, and this is Budget Elves for Modern. You know what today is? It's Modern Monday, and today we're going over a modern deck that I really love, but we're actually making it a little bit cheaper for you guys who want to get in on the modern format without having to spend over $600 in paper. This is Modern Elves, and I'll say it's kind of a budget Elves because it's under $100, or under 100 tickets, rather, on MTGO, and then it's under 300 on Paper Magic. If you actually build the real Modern Elves, it's actually around like $600. So this is like not anywhere near that right now. Of course, the goal of this was to make it cheaper, but make it also no more or less effective than the regular Modern Elves deck. But before I get into the video, make sure to like the video if you like it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and make sure to hit the notification button right beside the subscription button to know when we upload a video on the channel and when we go live on the stream right here on YouTube. But without further ado, let's get right into the deck list here. We have, starting out at the 1 mana slot, there's gonna be a lot of these, a Elvish Mystic, a 1 green mana 1/1 elf druid, add 1 green to your mana pool. We're gonna have a 4 here. So basically the elf deck, if you guys don't know in Modern, is to be building out a lot of board state really quickly. And with the elves, you have a lot of kind of like elves like this that just produce mana. So going up from Elvish Mystic here, we have 4 Heritage Druid, a 1 green mana 1/1 elf druid, tap 3 untapped elves you control, add 3 green mana to your mana pool. So another great way to add some mana to our mana pool, again ramping into other creatures we have. Then a card I didn't really see in a lot of the elf lists, but I think is really actually pretty good, we have here is 2 Jorga Warcaller, a 1 green mana 1/1 elf warrior with a multi-kicker for 2. And of course, multi-kicker is you may pay an additional 2 mana any number of times as you cast this spell. So basically, you can just do a 1 mana 1/1 here if you want to, or you can do 3 mana here to kick it 1 time. And it's a Jorga Warcaller, and there's a battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. And other elf creatures you control get +1/+1 for each +1/+1 counter on Jorga Warcaller. So it's a great way if you want to just pay 3 mana. We get a 2/2 that's actually a Lord for elves on the battlefield, or also pay 5 mana and get a +2/+2 on the battlefield for every elf on the battlefield as well. So Jorga Warcaller can be a great way to kind of round out a match if we have a lot of mana on the battlefield to be able to sink into it. So it's a great way to kind of like end a match quickly for us. Moving back to some mana producers here, we have 4 Llanowar Elves, a 1/1 elf druid, and of course it taps to add 1 green mana to your mana pool. A simple card, very effective, and love it. Next up, we have 2 Nettle Sentinel. This is a 1 mana 2/2 elf warrior that it doesn't untap during its controller's untap step, and whenever you play a green spell, you may untap Nettle Sentinel. So Nettle Sentinel is actually one of the weird cards in the elf deck that's quite expensive. I'm not exactly sure why. If you guys want to leave a comment in the comments below on why this card is that expensive, but 2 cards alone is like 8 tickets or $8, something like that. But I only put 2 in here because of the price difference here. But it's still a great elf because it is a 1 mana 2/2. Going to the 2 mana slots here, we have 4 Devoted Druid. It's an 0/2 for 2 elf druid. You can tap it to add 1 green mana in your mana pool, and you can put a +1/+1 counter on Devoted Druid and untap Devoted Druid. So if you notice in the new sets, we have a card where you can actually go infinite with Devoted Druid, and that card is in here. Even though it's not an elf, it's still in this deck because Devoted Druid and infinite mana is awesome. Moving up, we have 4 Winans Elite, a 2 mana 2/2 elf warrior, and of course when it enters the battlefield, if you control another elf, put a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token onto the battlefield. So a great way to make a 2/2 and a 1/1 just by having other elves on the battlefield. Fantastic. Next up, we have 2 Fauna Shaman. This is a 2 mana 2/2 elf shaman. You can pay 1 green mana, tap, and discard a creature card, search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. So this is a great way to kind of fix a situation if you just have mana producers in your hand and you're really looking for an elf lord. You can actually do this ability here and get that out on the battlefield really quickly. Of course, it goes into your hand and onto the battlefield, but assuming you have a lot of mana by this point in the game, it's going to be great for us. Next up, we have the card where you can go infinite with. You have Vizier of Memories, a 2 mana 2/1 human cleric. If 1 or more -1/-1 counters will be put on a creature you control, that many -1 counters -1 are put on it instead. So this is a great way to use with Devoted Druid because it makes it so when it taps and puts a -1 counter on it or untaps, and Vizier of Memories is on the battlefield, it untaps it again and taps and untaps, untaps and taps. So it's basically infinite mana. I couldn't not include this in the deck, basically. It's the only white card in the main board here. Moving on, we have 4 Elvish Archdruid. We're getting up into our lords now. A 3 mana 2/2 elf druid. Other elves you control get +1/+1, which is great, and you can actually tap this and add 1 green mana to your mana pool for each elf you control. So a great way to ramp really quickly to get some explosive elf action on the battlefield. Next up, we have Azuri Renegade Leader, a 3 mana 2/2 as well, Elf Warrior, and you can actually pay 1 green mana, regenerate another target elf, or pay 5 mana. Elf creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. So Uzuri is going to be a great way to just end a match because you can actually pump this multiple times if you want to or if you can. And if you do get into a situation where you're actually trading, you can just regenerate another target elf, which is fantastic. Uzuri is going to be another great way to end up a match for us. Besides Uzuri and the Elvish Archdruid, of course, we have the Jorgo Warcaller. That's a total of about 6 Elf Lords as far as a +1/+1, and then 10 overall that can actually end up winning us the match. But that is all the creatures in the set. We have 35 in the deck. It's a ton of creatures. So this is a super heavy creature strategy, and I love it. So let's go into spells and see what we can do. We have 2 Lead the Stampede, a 3-mana sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal any number of creature cards from among them, put them revealed into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So a great way, because we have 35 creatures in our deck, it's a great way to grab like 2 or 3 creatures, put them into our hand, and then kind of like put the rest on the bottom of our library. If they're lands, we probably don't need lands by this point in the game. Just a fantastic way to kind of get into some more creatures for us. And next up, you know what's in here. We have 3 Collected Company, the most expensive set of cards in the actual board here. Collective Company is a 4-mana instant. Look at the top 6 cards of your library, put up to 2 creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So Collected Company is a fantastic way for us to put creatures onto the battlefield because everything in our deck is 3 mana or less. More often than not, when we cast a Collective Company, we're going to be placing at least 2 or 3 creatures from our deck into the battlefield, and that's going to be a fantastic way for us to turn the tide in a battle. We do want to keep in mind, though, that we do have Elvish Archdruid and Uzuri Renegade Leader as well, so those 2 creatures are legendary, so we do want to make sure that we don't hit those too frequently with Collected Company. And the last 2 cards in the deck are actually new artifacts, because I thought this would be fun to run in here. We have 2 Vanquisher's Banner. It's a 5-mana artifact. As Vanquisher's Banner enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creatures you control of the chosen type get +1/+1, and whenever you cast a creature spell of the chosen type, draw a card. This card is insanely powerful for us because it +1/+1s our entire board, but also when we cast an elf, which we will be able to frequently, it draws us a card giving us more gas to hopefully cast another elf. So it's a great way for us to draw into some more gas turn over turn, back to back to back to back. Now the only thing is Collected Company doesn't actually cast the creatures, it just puts them from the deck into the battlefield. So the Vanquisher's Banner trigger does not go off, I don't believe, but if we have a judge in the comments, I would love to hear that, just in case. But as I understand it, a Collected Company doesn't actually cast the creatures, it just puts them onto the battlefield. Either way, Vanquisher's Banner is going to be our 3rd lord of the deck. But that is it for actual cards in the main board. Let's go over lands real quick. We have 1 Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. This is a legendary land. You can tap it, add 1 color to your mana pool, or you can pay 2 and tap it, choose a color, add to your mana pool any amount of mana that color equal to the devotion to that color. So basically anything with, and of course your devotion to a color is the number of mana symbols that a color in the mana costs of a permanent you control. So basically if you have a lot of elves on the battlefield, you can get a lot of green mana. Next up, we have 1 Pindell Haven. It's a legendary land. You can tap it to add green mana, and you can also tap it to have target 1/1 creature get +1/+2 until end of turn. So Pindell Haven is actually not that amazing for us, but it is a great way to kind of trade or maybe hold off a blocker for the turn. Next up, we have Razorverge Thicket. It's a kind of a cheap land for us. Razorverge Thicket enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or fewer lands. It's a green and white mana for us. Then we also have 4 Sunpetal Grove. It's a buddy land for us. Enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest or plains, and we can tap it for green or white. Then we have 3 plains and 5 forests, so only 18 lands in total. And the reason it's so low is because we have a lot of creatures that produce green mana for us, which is exactly what we need. It's definitely possible to run this entire deck on just 2 to 3 mana the entire match, thanks to cards like Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and things like that. So basically, game 1 game plan, get out your mana producers, get a lot of elves on the battlefield by turn 3 or 4, and then kind of swing for the win by turn 4 or 5, and then kind of close out the match. But what can we do in game 2? Let's go to the sideboard here. We have 1 Autumn's Veil. It's a green mana instant. Spells you control can't be countered by blue or black spells this turn, and creatures you control can't be the targets of blue or black spells this turn. So it's a great way to kind of either 1, work around a counter spell, and 2, work around stuff like a Fatal Push, Doomblade, things like that. Things that an opponent will definitely have in their main board up against us. So it doesn't stop a Path to Exile for us, sadly, but it does stop some other spells that are a pain in the butt for us. Next up, we have 1 Condemn, a 1 mana instant. Put target attacking creature on the bottom of its owner's library. Its controller gains life equal to its toughness. So it's kind of a Path to Exile, as it does get rid of it and doesn't throw it into the graveyard. So that might be more useful to us depending on the matchup we're playing against. So that's why Condemn is in the sideboard here for us. If we have something where we want to go to the graveyard for like Delve or Dredge or something like that, then Condemn is going to be the perfect play for us. Next up, we have 2 Fragmentize. This is going to be up against the Affinity matchup and any kind of enchantment matchup, something like probably Boggles, any kind of other enchantment matchup. Fragmentize is 1 white mana sorcery, destroy target artifact or enchantment with converted mana cost 4 or less. So fantastic way to get rid of an Oblivion Ring, fantastic way to get rid of an artifact. Next up, we have 3 Path to Exile here. It's a 1 white mana instant. Exile target creature. Its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card, put that card onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle his or her library. So a fantastic card to bring in for an affinity strategy probably, or any kind of large creature strategy. Most of the time, we're going to be able to outmatch them with creatures because of the just sheer number of them we'll have on the battlefield. But Path to Exile is going to be a great way to get rid of particular creatures that we kind of find that are going to be hard to deal with either in blocking or attacking. Next up, we have 1 Celestial Purge. This is kind of an interesting pick for me. It's a 2 mana instant, exile target black or red permanent. So this is a great way to get rid of either a Death Shadow that's really quickly, like say the Surgical Extraction or a Path to Exile. Celestial Purge is going to be a great way to get rid of them as well. Basically, the only reason Celestial Purge is in here is because Surgical Extraction was a card that I was running up against quite a lot after using a first Path to Exile against a Death Shadows deck in Game 2. Next up, we have 1 Gadok Teague, a 1 green, 1 white mana legendary creature. It's a 2/2, and non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or greater can't be played, which is fantastic for us because we have everything in our deck that is 3 or lower, and non-creature spells with X in their mana costs can't be played as well. So Gadok Teague is actually a card that we can actually play with no fear of locking down our strategy at all. One of the things that like a lot of people have in the Elf deck is a Court of Calling strategy, and if Gadok Teague comes in from the sideboard into the main board, it's actually locking down that card completely. So you want to make sure that your entire deck is kind of like not worried about this card at all and locking down your opponent instead. And that is exactly what it does. Next up, we have Kataki War's Wage. This is a 2 mana 2/1 legendary creature spirit, and all artifacts have, quote, at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice this artifact unless you pay 1 colorless. Obviously, this is towards a more affinity strategy or artifact-based strategy. Kataki is fantastic at shutting down that strategy if they're tapped out of mana the turn that you play this. So it's just fantastic for us to kind of lock down their entire board with just a simple 2/1 here for 2 mana. Next up, we have 1 Phyrexian Revoker here, a 2 mana 2/1 horror. As Phyrexian Revoker enters the battlefield, name a non-land card. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated. So this is a great way at shutting down either a Planeswalker, any kind of like enchantment or artifact we don't really like, as well as a creature with any kind of interesting abilities as well. So Phyrexian Revoker is a fantastic way of kind of locking down a strategy to make sure we can kind of build out our board continually. Next up, we have 1 Selfless Spirit here, a 2 mana 2/1 Spirit Cleric with flying. Sacrifice Selfless Spirit. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. So this is basically going in Game 2 against a deck that has a lot of board wipe specials in their actual main board here or in the Game 2 strategy. Lots of games going to be going up against like a Pyroclasm, things like that. Selfless Spirit is going to go on the battlefield to help deal with those as quickly as humanly possible. Obviously, Selfless Spirit is going to be a removal magnet as well, kind of getting the Path to Exile or any kind of Doomblade or Fatal Push, things like that. But it is a fantastic way to kind of sacrifice and make our entire board indestructible and hopefully strong enough to withstand a board wipe. Next up, we have another Infinity or Artifact hate card. This is Stony Silence, a 2 mana enchantment. Activated abilities of artifacts can't be activated. So Phyrexian Revoker may be able to come in to shut down some artifacts, but if we really want to have something to shut down artifacts, we bring in Stony Silence. It's a fantastic way to get rid of any kind of artifacts that we like to not deal with, rather, and a great way to kind of make sure that our opponent knows what's up. I love Stony Silence, and I'm not a fan of Affinity in Modern, if you can't tell. And lastly, the last 2 cards in the deck, we have Reclamation Shades here. It's a 3 mana 2/1 Elf Shaman. When it enters the battlefield, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. Again, going up against a Boggles or artifact-driven strategy. And that is the full 75, folks. If you go on MTG Traders, the actual deck list price is coming to about 90 tickets, which isn't bad for a Modern deck. On paper, it's coming to about $275, which again isn't terrible for a great Modern deck list for Elves. But of course, let me know what you think, guys. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you have any suggestions for it? Please leave it in the comments below. I'm still kind of new to Modern, so if I missed a card, please let me know in the comments. Would love to hear your feedback on that kind of stuff. As always, though, like the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We got new videos every single day of the week, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Love ya. Peace.